Now let's deal with an attitude, an ethos, which is meant to help us deal with the modern world of mediocrity, and where the masses, quantity, overpowers quality, the few. Now, some preliminary steps have been undertaken by some. That is, they've woken up from their Judeo-Christian slumber, and they've stopped associating themselves with the large group called humanity, finding their an identification, most of the time with individuals that have nothing in common with. Some, such as in the feminist and the MRA movements, are now more selective. Their sense of identity is more refined, yet doesn't go far enough. The feminists now see that there's a difference, and the MRAs, that there's a difference between a subgroup within the term humanity, that is, between males and females. And up to recently, this distinction has been prohibited. One cannot even speak of it, or imply it, or insinuate it, without being accused of hate. A label, an insulting label being cast against them, such as sexist. But there's more. The more refined the mind becomes, the more its identity becomes more distinguished, discriminating, more refined. But this goes even beyond race. So race is another aspect of consciousness of differentiation, of distinction. That is, as we can see in the difference between male and females, the psychological differences, we can also see similar differences between races, tribes, if you want to call them that, breeds. You see, a culture does not come out of the nothings. It is organic. What do I mean? I mean, a way of thinking springs out of a biology which is rooted in a historical context. A people living within a particular environment and facing particular challenges developed a particular mindset, and this becomes an ideology, a way of looking upon the world. And this is not separate from their genetics, their past, because genetics is simply how the organism interacts with the environment and the outcome of this. So we see now the connection between memes and genes. That is, memes are direct products of genes interacting with the environment. They take over where genes leave off. If we proceed with our line of thinking, then we will admit that there's differences between men and women. So the concept of humanity is too general to include everybody. And in fact, the simpler the mind is, the more it is taken over by this simplification, generalization. In fact, the fundamental characteristic of a more sophisticated mind is its more refined simplifications and generalizations, because inevitably the mind must make some. But the more refined these generalizations are, the more sophisticated they are, the more sophisticated the mind is. So the mind now, having been released from the simplistic, almost childish generalization of humanity, as it is proposed to it, as a way of controlling consciousness and populations, delves deeper. It becomes more discriminating, sees differences now between the sexes. But still, it is inhibited to go further, to see differences between the races, see the connection between race and biology, or appearance and psychology, and limitations. and intelligence. That is, to admit that the apparent is not only superficial, but it's an indication of a spirit, and that evolution doesn't only work upon the physical form, but it also works upon the mind. It establishes limitations, characteristics, psychology, attitudes there. But now we must go further. Even within the same race, there are going to be minds that are even more refined, more discriminating. That is, they will not associate themselves with all within their particular racial group. They will not identify with a national identity. They will not identify with a tribe or a religion. They will be more refined. This is what I call the aristocracy of the mind. That is, its refinement to the point where its sense of self makes it perceive more finer details in others. So now it is possible to find more similarities between a man and a female, a male and a female, than there is between a male and another male. So a man can have more similarities, intellectual connections with a female than he can with a man. To simply say that all men are of my kind is a gross misunderstanding of biology. It's as if to say that all humans are of my kind. This too is a overgeneralization. So now we're entering into the realm of mimetics. That is, connections, communities based on attitudes, on ways of thinking, on intellectual prowess, on attitude, on a way of engaging the world, of seeing the world, of accepting the world, level of courage in this regard, because accepting the world involves courage. One cannot just that's why a lot of intelligent people fall into faith or into humanism, because though they have the capacity to perceive, what they perceive they cannot bear, cannot deal with. So they run to the easiest comforts, the comfort of unity within a uniform state. I will use a metaphor to describe the form of aristocracy I'm talking about. It has nothing to do with wealth, money, privilege, social status. It has to do with perception, sensitivity to reality, way to endure it, to accept it. And I will use this metaphor that I've used many times before. The perception of quality of wine. Some individuals can drink a wine, any wine, and they, except for some minor differences, cannot perceive many details within it. Yet a more refined palate can perceive scents, subtle tastes. He can connect them to regions of the world. His sense of his sensual awareness is so refined that he can do this. He can trace it back, that is, to a historical context, a geographical area. Here we see how the appearance, because appearance is not only visual, it's also textual, it's form, it's taste, it's smell, it's sound. You can see how appearance now can be traced back simply by being perceptible, by being sensitive to the details. It's a matter of perceiving details and being able to assimilate these details within into cohesive models, to find in the chaos of existence, in the multiplicity, patterns, and to be able to formulate understanding using these patterns. So we're talking about a level of awareness which distinguishes one individual from another, and this crosses the genetic boundaries. That is, you can find individuals within all races and all sexes. Yet, this does not dismiss genetics, the genetics of female, male, and about the genetics of races. Why? Because sex and race, that is your bloodline, determines the potential you have. It establishes a potential. It determines a potential. So, albeit these sensitive aristocratic minds can be produced within any tribe, and any sex can have it, can be burdened with it, or be gifted with it, because it is both a gift and a burden. The potential is limited by the sex and by the bloodline. So now we see in this increasing uniformity, this push to make everything level, to eradicate all natural distinctions, to eradicate all consciousness of it, to shame consciousness into not taking into consideration any sensuality that, at least in reference to the human being. We see a reaction to this. That is, as more uniformity is proposed, a segment of the population will display a more discriminating attitude. It will even refine its perceptions. It will see more difference. It will focus on the difference rather than on the similarities. As it pertains to sex, this will result in a reluctance to fornicate with anything below a certain quality, just because it belongs to the opposite sex. There will be a more discriminating attitude towards with whom you interact. You will choose to be alone rather than to have many friends. That is, I will go back to my motto, less is more. You will choose less of quality rather than more of quantity. And you will define yourself and identify yourself with that choice. That is, instead of being ashamed and embarrassed by your discriminating tastes, you will be proud of them. You will base your sense of self upon them, because identity in the end is about this discrimination of otherness from self. We are, in other words, but we are not. And by hating or pushing back certain phenomena, certain otherness, we define who we are and who we choose to be. Because in the end, self is not a static, it's not a being, it's a becoming, it's a process, an ongoing process. And the ideal which guides this process towards an objective is what identifies us as a person, as an individual, as a mind. We are what we eat, yes, but we are also what we fuck, and who our friends are, and who we choose to associate ourselves with and identify ourselves with.